Point Break, The Italian Job. One of my favorite heist movies of all time is actually The Apple Dumpling Gang. It's a Disney movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. Here's the crazy thing right now is that heists and bank robberies at one point in time were how criminals made money. And when you're looking at the history of criminals making money, if you look back to the 1900s, before that, and to 1800s, they would rob the stagecoach. And there's movies about that throughout history. But the crazy thing is, how things have evolved into how they are now is pretty interesting. I want to show you a couple things here. If you like these videos, please like, subscribe, ask me questions as well. I'm always happy for the questions that come in. I'm always happy to engage as well. When it comes to the history of robberies, we have these movies like Point Break, where they do the bank robbery. People will go in with the guns and intimidate everybody or shoot in the air. And sometimes, unfortunately, people get hurt. And the robberies, that's how criminals used to make money. Some of the most famous criminals are going to be John Dillinger, Patty Hearst, Bonnie Parker. Some of the more famous ones are their gangs. What's interesting is, if you look at the most money bank robbers made in history, 1972, United California bank robbery, they made $30 million. Pierre Hotel, New York, January 1972. 72 was a bad year for bank robberies. They made $27 million. And in Dunbar armored robbery, they made $18.9 million. There's another one in 1997 that's a Loomis Fargo robbery. And actually, a lot of us now probably remember that one. And that was $18.8 million. So what's my point? My whole point is that you look at somebody like Bernie Madoff, he actually stole more than $64 billion. That's with a B. And now in real estate, one of the most important things while you're going through a real estate transaction is to be diligent about where your funds are being wired. Inside of a transaction, you're going to have the buyer side and you're going to have the seller side. Buyer is going to be purchasing the property from the seller. There's representation typically on both sides, and sometimes there's not on one side or the other. One thing that is always done is going to be an escrow company. An escrow company is a neutral third party. I've done videos about this in the past. Purpose of the escrow is to follow instructions on both sides. Part of those instructions are going to be when escrow is sending instructions to a buyer. Typically, that's where the funds are coming from, and then escrow is sending those funds. Eventually, at the end of the sale, escrow will be sending those funds over to the seller. What thieves have learned and what wire fraud issues we have now is that folks who want to steal a lot of money in one simple transaction will use what's called phishing emails. These phishing emails, whenever you're working with an escrow company and whenever you're working with an agent, buyers or seller side, everything should be encrypted. Specifically for the escrow companies, everything is going to be encrypted. When you get the email, it will say this is an encrypted email. This is a private email. And these thieves are very good about monitoring, sending phishing emails. And through the phishing emails, it's not like fishing with a pole. It's spelled differently. It's PHI phishing. So when these thieves are monitoring, they're going to case these emails for as long as they can, and sometimes up to 6 or 7 months. I've heard studies about 6 or 7 months of these thieves casing the emails and getting information from these emails so that they can eventually act as if they are the escrow company, as if they are the realtor on one side or the other. And that's how these scams happen. In 2017, almost $1 billion was made with the phishing scam and the wire fraud. Specifically the wire fraud. The phishing scam is a prelude to the wire fraud. But almost $1 billion was made by wire fraud in 2017. So we figure, okay, everybody has learned. Maybe not, because in 2022, $1.4 billion was scammed through wire fraud. We're not learning, and more funds are going to escrow, and instead of escrow account, they're actually going to a wire fraudster, a wire fraud thief. All of these funds can easily be saved. When you're working with a real estate transaction, make sure that any emails that come to you, specifically when you're talking about the funds and where they're going to, wire transactions, wiring fees, all of these different things, make sure that you are following up with escrow, checking in with your agent. Make sure that you are asking the question of, is this you? Get a verbal, get the email as well. On the verbal, make sure and confirm the wiring instructions on both sides. Make sure that your wiring instructions that you get in your email are the correct wiring instructions. These thieves are not letting up, and wire fraud is the new bank robbery. It makes it so much easier for them to just have funds wired to them to an account that they have been able to set up, and then they just close that account and the money's gone. It's not too often that the funds are actually pulled back and it's actually saved. This is a very important piece. Need to make sure that when you're working with escrow, when you're working with a real estate transaction, you have the wiring instructions set up properly and you are confirming your wiring instructions with escrow. Escrow is a neutral third party. Escrow takes instructions from both sides. Escrow brings the money in and then disperses the money. So if the bank is sending $1 million to escrow, the bank will send $1 million to escrow. Escrow at the close of the sale will then send that money to the seller, less all the other fees. If an individual is purchasing a home with cash, they will wire those funds to escrow. Escrow will then at close send those funds to the seller minus all the fees. The biggest thing you have to watch out for is that the banks already know that fraud is going on. Do you know that fraud is going on with escrow? Make sure that you're paying attention to this. It's huge, and thieves no longer need to worry about going in guns blazing for a bank like they did back in the 1920s, like they did at Point Break. And one of my favorites, the Italian Job, a little bit different. But there's different ways for these thieves to maneuver, and wire fraud is certainly one of the biggest, newest ways that they've been doing it. Billions of dollars are lost. One actual example is the state Supreme Court judge lost over $1 million in real estate email scam. So if you think that it can't happen to you, think again. Make sure that you're paying attention. Make sure that when you're involved in a real estate transaction, you are dotting your I's and crossing your T's, checking your Q's and P's to make sure that everything is going to the right place. All of your funds are going to the right place. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm always here and happy to help. If you have any ideas for videos, please let me know. I love doing the videos. It's very fun for me to do them. And also make sure if you have any questions, reach out and make sure that you shoot me a question here. I'm always happy to respond and let you know what's happening. Take care. Talk to you soon.